Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marine. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week, and this is going to be the astro weather for the week of September 7th through the 14th, 2025. In this video, we're going to talk all things revolving around planets conjunct the South Node in Virgo, and much, much more, the lunar transits and what to be expecting on the day-to-day. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click that bell button down below so you're alerted as to when I have new videos. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and like this video. Consider sharing on your socials. And while you're there, follow me at BTV Astro on X. And drop me a comment below. Let me know, how are you guys feeling with this lunar eclipse taking place on Sunday the 7th? All right, guys, and also just a few heads up about the channel. So we're going to be here live on Friday. We're going to be doing tarot readings. That'll be taking place at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Come hang out on Friday and get your cards read. It's always a good time. And it's not too late to check out my Fall 2025 Eclipse webinar. As you guys know, if you're watching this on the 7th, this is the lunar eclipse day. And as a special this month, if you guys actually join my level 4 memberships on my channel, you guys will get instant access to this. So consider joining. That way you can get a reading and you guys can check out this webinar. If not, it's for sale in the links below. Head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. Great webinar talking about both the lunar eclipse in Pisces and also the solar eclipse in Virgo, what it means for the collective, for you guys, how to navigate, and lots of ritual information and ideas. And like I said, it's over 3 hours long, so definitely check that out. All right, so weekly vibe, how are we doing? You guys doing good? I know that there's an eclipse this morning, but honestly, we know that once one eclipse comes in, there's another one 2 weeks later, so they kind of are bookends and portals of change. So this week, we're gonna feel that it's kind of carrying a karmic heavy vibe. The energy is really focusing on these planets dancing on the South Node in Virgo. So it's going to be all about, release, focusing on that, purification, shedding old patterns, and kind of getting our shift together. So grab a bucket, a mop, probably some dust busters, some gloves, some trash bags. We're cleaning it all out this week because the South Node in Virgo is really about activations as the Sun and Mercury come into conjunction, really emphasizing letting go of what has been breaking down, what's not working, but also not being so hard on ourselves, releasing perfectionist kind of tendencies, overanalysis, and obviously outdated, routines, bad habits. That's all got to go if it's not serving our growth. So we're going to become acutely aware of that over the next 7 days. But I am expecting themes revolving around healing, service, and discernment to dominate. There is a potential for more anxiety or nitpicking this week. If you're resisting the flow, remember this is all opposing the North Node in Pisces, where we're kind of having to tap into our intuition. We're having to trust the process, and Saturn is retrograde back into the same sign. So this lunar eclipse on Sunday the 7th is kicking off eclipse season for 2025. And this is all about emotional closures. But some of the positive aspects are going to be the trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter being the ruler in the sign of Cancer. So it's big for emotional kind of clearing, house clearing, positive changes with our families, our home, and our schedule. And we're also going to be watching the Sun-Mercury conjunction with the South Node, followed by a Mercury Cazimi. So overall, this week is all about detoxing the mind, the body, as well as the spirit. And this is about really embracing the purge to make space for new beginnings. So key transits you want to watch for this week is the lunar eclipse on Sunday, September 7th. If you guys are watching this on Sunday, if you're part of my Sunday crew, let me know what rituals you guys are doing, how you're feeling with this energy. Are you just feeling like you just want to relax and kind of vibe out and enjoy the last bits of summer? Probably. But this will be a total lunar eclipse that'll be taking place. So I am expecting some big emotional closure, spiritual insight, but also a focus on empathy and compassion, right? It is in Pisces. And obviously we can see some really heightened dreams and kind of heightened intuition, but possible confusion can be kind of coming up with this eclipse, as well as escapism. So how much isolation is too much? Where do we need to get out of our own way type of thing? Now you will see around the September 10th, that's when the Sun is going to conjunct the South Node, representing that karmic release around identity and ego. Obviously, this will involve for a lot of us having to let go of the ego. I know, easier said than done. But also, this is about letting go of self-criticism. It's possible for some people, health issues can be, surfacing for resolution and reevaluating our daily habits. Then on the 11th, we will see Mercury follow suit and conjunct the South Node in Virgo. Obviously, Mercury is the ruler here, and it has connections to Uranus and Gemini. So this is all about mental purification as well as communication breakdowns. So watch for outages that we might be seeing at work. We might be seeing some issues revolving around communication, transportation. And obviously, this is going to really affect bringing closure to old ideas, potential miscommunications, but opportunities for insightful realizations. A lot of people are going to get sick of their shit this week. They're going to be like, no more of these bad habits, or I'm finally quitting my job, or it's time for me to finally make a shift or a change in a different direction, which I think is the positive. And it's all in preparation for September 21st when we have that new moon solar eclipse in Virgo. Now on the 13th, we're going to see a Sun-Mercury cazimi. Now you guys will get a separate video about that. That is important, but I want to talk about the South Node connections first before we have this bright new opportunity and idea. But obviously, the cazimi is both the superior conjunction between Mercury and the Sun, where it's really going to ignite brilliant ideas and give us the opportunity for better mental alignment, breakthroughs, sudden clarity, and problem solving. However, even though this is kind of seeding new thought patterns, Mercury is dying in the heart of the Sun. So the fact that it's going to conjunct the South Node, it's going to cazimi with the Sun, tells me that there is major breakdown going on in regards to the job markets. Now, I've been talking about this like a broken record for the last several months. I was like, watch what happens in the fall. And this like damning job report just recently kind of came out here in the United States, which is not spelling out a lot of positive energy in regards to jobs and employment numbers. And I think there's going to be more disclosure around some of those things, as well as major topics connecting to health. Anyway, so these are the key transits that I'm going to be really focusing on this week. Obviously, it's more than one, and they're kind of jumbled over that 3-day period. So you're going to see all of this kind of taking place, obviously, between eclipses. And we know that that's kind of like anything goes between now and the 21st. But in particular, the 10th, 11th, and 13th, these are the days that you're going to be seeing all of this energy kind of breaking down and clearing out. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about what this means and some of the connections with Mercury and the Sun in conjunction to the South Node. First of all, who this is going to affect the most. So if you happen to be a Gemini or a Virgo rising, because Mercury rules your chart, and Virgo, it's very personal for you, this conjunction is going to be rather significant, especially when it comes to your, personal authority, anything connecting to obviously your body and your health. Gemini, this is important for you as well, although I think it's more so kind of connected to cleaning house and dealing with family matters. And Leo, this is going to be significant for you because the Sun is your chart ruler. Leo, watch your wallet this week. There can definitely be some rather kind of significant fluctuations happening with money. Great time to just get rid of stuff, declutter, and donate things, and possibly even kind of clean up your spending or even your eating habits. But if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I will talk about what these transits mean for all 12 of the rising signs. Now, when planets are dancing on the South Node, right? So we see the South Node in Virgo roughly every 18 and a half, 19 years. So this is rather unusual and rare in this particular sign, right? Because we only get it that often. But, planets conjunct the South Node on a regular basis, so they're making aspects to the South Node on a regular basis. And when we see the conjunction is one of the strongest aspects in astrology. So it's like a fusion of two things. Well, the South Node is not a planet, although some Vedic astrologers would argue it acts as if it's like a black hole or something that is just kind of sucking up or kind of removing things. It can also be a time where we're falling into kind of bad habits or things that we have a tendency to kind of get stuck in. So as we see a conjunction to the South Node, it's symbolizing a karmic release point where past life patterns or outdated habits are coming up. And it can also represent overdeveloped traits that come up for purging. So it's kind of like a cosmic decluttering this week. And this is the first time we've had this because the nodes actually shifted earlier this year in 2025. So we haven't seen these transits making aspects to the South Node outside of the lunar eclipse that we saw in Virgo this spring. Now, I do feel like the energy here is really highlighting also what we've mastered in previous cycles, but now we need to kind of like let go of it in order to evolve. So I think in Virgo, it's really emphasizing releasing the need to be perfect. It's also releasing excess worry or maybe service-oriented burnout. Maybe we've been hypercritical in our thinking and we need to make more room for the opposition of that North Node in Pisces, which is going with the flow, surrendering, listening to our intuition, and obviously spiritual unity. Now, the North Node's not easy. It's oftentimes what's kind of like scary or challenging, or we can't quite see very clearly, especially in the sign of Pisces. So when we look at Mercury conjunct the South Node in Virgo, this transit's bringing a mental reset. I love this transit for if you finally need to go through your email inbox and get rid of a bunch of spam, or you need to clear out a bunch of stuff, or maybe you finally want to get rid of a bunch of old text messages, or you want to clear your hard drives, or anything revolving around data, gadgets, that kind of stuff. It's great, but it's also good for decluttering. So really this energy is used to urge us to kind of release old thought loops and outdated information or communication styles. However, it can also manifest on the other end of the spectrum where, there can be forgotten details that are now resurfacing and miscommunications that are getting highlighted that kind of need to end. It's possible that there can be a breakthrough and also discarding unhelpful analysis. So where we're just like information overload or there's just too much kind of going on. And I do think that one of the negative effects of some of these transits is I do think a lot of us are going to have mental fatigue if we are resisting some of this change because it's going to be too much. Now, it can also feel very liberating, through simplifying our mindset and really kind of trusting our intuition over logic. I keep saying, logic, you had your chance, astrology, take the wheel. And I feel like that's really going to be like the theme of the better part of the next couple of weeks with these eclipses. Now, we will also see the sun conjunct the South Node. So that conjunction is going to be right around the same degree, 18 degrees. And the sun here is really illuminating karmic ego patterns. The sun can be connected to the men in our lives, superiors, leaders. It can also be reflecting anything connecting to children. As we know, Venus is in Leo, and that's connected to the sun. But also, I think this is really about kind of pushing us to release self-identity tied to being a workaholic, right? Constantly like just being on the grind and never stopping and needing to kind of like, run ourselves into the ground, which then kind of inflames some of the Virgo energy where we can also be more self-critical and we can focus on being like too overly responsible for stuff. So it does represent, I think in a way, a solar eclipse-like energy, even if it's not exact, where the vitality dips temporarily, and that's happening to really force us into reflection on health routines as well as service. So the effects of this conjunction can be feeling drained, facing, past unresolved trauma, but ultimately it's happening to kind of empower us, and it's about rebirth through humility and practical healing. Now, keep in mind, this is happening before we have the Cazimi, right, which we will see this week. This is also happening before we start to see Mercury oppose Saturn, which is going to be happening pretty soon. It's also happening before we have a solar eclipse in Virgo on the 21st, which will oppose Saturn. I kind of see this energy as like, are we just running around trying to look busy, kind of like chasing our tail, rather than actually getting anything done? And if we're like burning ourselves out and we're feeling energetically, emotionally, spiritually depleted, how are we ever actually going to be able to do any quality work? And is this actually really productive for us in the long term? Just some food for thought. So I think with the sun being the dispositor of Venus, right? Venus is going to be hanging out in Leo. This does kind of signify that, this is a setup that's karmic release that's tied to Leo things and Venus things. Creativity, romance, self-expression, relationship drama that we're finally kind of ironing out. And I think the South Node is really kind of linking that amplification to purge these particular areas, potentially bringing endings in relationships or creative projects that can feel more ego-driven or unsustainable in the long term. I do think that we can expect major fluctuations in the markets, although we've already kind of been seeing that recently, as well as anything that's speculative, gambling, stuff like that, entertainment sectors. And we can find that there's a lot of relationship realignments that are going to be taking place that's favoring authenticity over drama. And I do anticipate we're going to see headlines on pediatric wellness or leaders facing health crisis, and this is really symbolizing shifts in authority. So as Mercury comes into conjunction with the South Node, we're looking at what Mercury rules. Well, Mercury is connected to the sun, so it's like a double dose of that Virgo energy, information about news, health, leaders. And Mercury is also tied to Uranus and Gemini, which is now retrograde. So that connection is interesting because, Mercury ruling Uranus is really intensifying, mental innovation or, mental illness issues. It can also be bringing up old disruptions or kind of rebellious ideas, changes in media, as well as, any communications, and a change in direction. And so this is that time period that I was saying to people, people who were let go from their jobs might be reinstated. We can also see people who, were anticipating there was going to be better kind of job numbers or results going on in the economy. We're going to be backtracking and realizing actually that's not the case. What we're hearing in terms of how well things are going, we're going to see that's not really materializing in the real world economically. And there's going to be a lot of like pivots and change with kind of the narratives revolving around both health, jobs, and wellness. Virgo can also be about servants. So, civil servants, also things kind of connected to those who are serving in politics. But also, people who come and help take care of your kids, people who mow the lawn, people who are, picking up or dealing with your dry cleaning, your assistants, any connections to your people at work and your fellow colleagues, your healthcare, people as well. So there's going to be a lot of change revolving around these types of kind of characters throughout the next week. So the South Node connection here, I think, with Mercury and the South Node and that connection to Uranus retrograde is really prompting us to release erratic thinking, doom scrolling, right? Obsessively kind of like needing to constantly look at the news and see what's happening with the news cycle. And it's also about letting go of outdated tech or communication habits. And it's really, I think, lending energy for us to find new ways to communicate. Now, I do think the effects can include sudden insights into past innovations, but it will caution against impulsive decisions. So we want to use this to kind of refine unconventional ideas in the Gemini area of our chart. Now, I'd like to read you guys the Sabian symbol because the conjunction with the South Node, the Sun, and Mercury are all going to be taking place at 18 degrees, which is a bit of a diabolical degree, but we'll get to that in a second. But I'm going to be reading you guys 19, okay? So actually, you know what? I take that back. I'm changing my mind. I'm having like a Mercury kissing me moment. I want to read to you guys 18 and 19. My rule of thumb is that if it's not exactly on the degree, I round up. But I was reading 18 degrees, which is the conjunction that it's going to be at, and I find it very interesting. So let's read 18. Really, we're going to focus more on 19, but 18 is interesting. So Virgo 18, a Ouija board. Okay, so this is about extrasensory perception. The symbol speaks to divination and the ability to anticipate the future by using practical reason to understand the meaning and significance of signs and signatures. The image of a Ouija board focuses on the planchette and using the device that is lightly touched by the parties and used to convey and record messages from the invisible to the visible realms. The planchette symbolizes the mind or consciousness. The emphasis here is on rational divination or the development of sensitivity to potential as it is discovered in the practical and everyday world, and on the ability to make sense of what is perceived. At its highest, it represents highly refined intuition, psychic sensitivity, extraordinary insight that is used to the advantage in mastering the everyday challenges of life. Negative is superstitiousness, an obsession with hidden meanings, and the inability to recognize and comprehend the obvious. The accent is on communication and discernment. Answers to important questions may be found and critical insights gained by making connections and finding the patterns in events and things around you. The greatest advantage lies in being sensitive to hidden messages in all things. Look for relevant signatures and meaning for convergences. Guard against letting superstition ruin your day. Don't get so obsessed with hidden meanings that you fail to see the obvious. Stepping stones is psychic abilities, channeling, communication, messages, telepathy, psychokinesis, divination, insight, the list goes on. So obviously we're getting into the September, October time. I could see a lot of people going like, oh, do I run out and grab my, Ouija board? Wouldn't recommend it. Not when the South Node is there. I could definitely see this as a time where, in a literal sense, people could be kind of losing their minds, right? South Node Mercury about some of the information in the news that's kind of breaking out. But it could also mean that we're having to look for the deeper meaning. We're having to really look at, okay, are we reading too much into this? Or are we actually picking up some synchronicities and things that are kind of pointing us in the direction of the future? So careful with those Ouija boards, kids. Definitely portals for demons, if you ask me. All right, Virgo 19. So this is the one that I really want to look at. This is a swimming race, and the keyword is elimination, and the theme is competition. So the symbol speaks to the fact that at higher levels of existence, that there are no winners or losers. In a practical and everyday world, competition stimulates individuals to perfect and refine their unique skills and talents. The image of swimming race also suggests that the individual who seeks to perfect and control only one part of himself will eventually divide himself from within. On a practical level, the symbol can indicate a race against time or a process of elimination to determine the best kind. Positive at its highest, the symbol represents the ability to hone in on any skill and talent to perfection as needed. Negative is a win at all costs philosophy and the inability to cooperate with others to establish oneself in any way, any meaningful way. So the accent is on competition. Whether it's trying to beat time or win the game, you may find yourself scrambling to keep up with it all. Your greatest advantage lies in making sure all the parts are in working order. Coordination and timing are important, and replacements may be necessary. Guard against underestimating the time you need to complete some task or meet a deadline. Make sure you have everything you need before you start that important project. Competitions, rivalry, conflict, challenge, concentration, comparison, contest, determination, skill, speed. So those of you guys who are into Nicola's degree theories, you guys know that 18 degrees is a difficult degree. But when we look at this from the perspective of 19, the swimming race, I think the symbol is really representing like this competitive kind of drive and a push for self-improvement through effort. But how much is too much? If we are too overly critical of ourselves, or we splitting ourselves in half and dividing ourselves, or like limiting ourselves from some kind of significant growth. I think that it does signify striving against others and oneself to kind of build in a fluid environment. And it does emphasize endurance and strategy and the thrill of progress. But the South Node is there. So it's like trying to win at all costs and like ultimately like the breakdown that kind of creates. So it does encourage healthy rivalry and to refine your skills, but it's warning against kind of cutthroat ambition and focusing on personal mastery over winning at all costs. Generally, because this is in Virgo and it's like a South Node energy, you could see a lot of inner office drama this week. You could see a lot of people pinning themselves against other people, very competitive work environment, kind of cutthroat, and like people who could be saying things or doing things to kind of like go against or kind of challenge or kind of combat, like the team in general, right? Or any success, like sabotage is kind of the vibe that I'm getting with this, which is some of the stuff that we're kind of hearing right now. Mercury can be documents, so documents, ideas, pamphlets, emails, focal points in terms of, talking points. And the sun is going to represent people who are trying to lead. So, just in this last week, we're hearing news about like, pamphlets and things kind of circling through the FDA, and like there's like people inside the FDA that are like conspiring to like overthrow, RFK. Whether or not that's true, that's not really what I'm saying, but it's interesting that these reports are kind of coming up because it really correlates with the astrology. And then thinking about how it's going to hit 18 degrees, so it's about cleaning out certain, groups or departments, especially in civil servant roles, if they're not actually helping or, like assisting when it comes to health. If they're just acting busy, but not actually getting any work done. That's very much the South Node in Virgo. And I think a lot of Virgos cringe when they kind of think about that, but it's true. And as these planets are building through the conjunction with the South Node, and they'll start to come into an opposition with, the lunar eclipse this Sunday, with, the North Node, and even with Saturn, you're going to start to see where there's a lot of people who are either working for you, working with you, you may not be aware, working against you, and it could even be yourself, because the sun could represent our own identity, and where we're like, whoa, we didn't even realize that some of these issues were kind of coming up because we weren't paying attention or the ego got in the way. Now on that 18 degrees, obviously one of the more difficult degrees, and this is like a double dose of Virgo, triple dose, quadruple dose, Mercury's there, it's going to be at a Mercury or a Virgo degree. The South Node is in Virgo. It doesn't get more gnarly than these aspects, guys. This can be an indication that it can both be a seeding for a new potential major health catastrophe, as much as I hate to say that, but it can also be a reevaluation and a return and a reassessment of what's gone on with health systems, what's gone on with pediatric health, what's gone on with rules and regulations revolving around food and health, and also like support for people. And obviously the South Node is there, so it's saying we can't become too reliant or too dependent. And also like having some sense of like any clarity, I think over the next week is going to be really challenging, because we lose that strength of that more analytical kind of side of Mercury in Virgo. Anyway, 18 degrees carries that Virgo energy, and it's linked to diabolical or challenging themes like illness, evil influences, or curing or healing crisis. So it represents survival through adversity, often manifesting as health struggles, and it does manipulate situations. I've noticed that. Also, there can be major transformative breakdowns that lead to profound recovery and opportunities for empathy. And planets here are really testing resilience, but offers mastery in service and purification. What you will find is that the typical Virgo energy cannot be found when planets are conjunct the South Node. It's actually going to be a little bit deeper and a little bit darker. So what I'm thinking is what we want to watch for this week generally, and I'll talk about what it means for the 12 signs at the end, is health flare-ups, okay? So we could find that there could be health flare-ups. Virgo can be anything connected to people who have had issues with diabetes. There can also be connections to changes with our health, our routine, our gyms, our doctors, our practitioners. I've said before, I'll say it again, this next month with the eclipses, there's going to be some jaw-dropping information that's going to start to come up. Now, in this last week, leading up to the video that I'm filming for you guys right now, Florida Governor DeSantis said, you know what, we're getting rid of all of the V all throughout the state of Florida. There's no longer a recommended schedule, which is quite astonishing. That's very much the sun, leadership, and Mercury making a decision to release and go away from what we have been told is safe and effective. And the oppositions to Saturn is, a leader or somebody going, this doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right, or we need to be cautious before we make big decisions, or we enforce new boundaries. The North Node being in Pisces is also saying listening to the intuition. It just so happens Florida is like a Pisces state. So it's going to be interesting to see the eclipses there and how other states may follow suit with some of this stuff. I do think that I would be paying attention to digestive and nervous system issues. I think that's a big one. Some of you guys may feel like, you know what, that's it. I'm changing gyms, or I'm going back to the gym, or I'm getting a new doctor, or, I'm changing directions with my health, my habits. This is kind of expected, really throughout the month of September, all the way up until the next eclipse. Communication mishaps and revealing of hidden truths. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for that Mercury-South Node. What has been missing, what has been hidden, data and information that significantly impacts our awareness and ability to make decisions when it comes to our health and our wellness, right? And in particular, the sun is connected to Venus, and that's children. Mercury is also connected to children and education and developmental disabilities and issues revolving around communication, delayed speech, and other ways of being able to kind of look at how children are growing and if they're hitting those milestones. So I'm interested to see what's going to come up this month. I think that, the hidden truths will be exposed. This is going to be a time where karmic encounters from the past can also come up. So we can see exes or old colleagues that can be resurfacing. And obviously, I do think there will be market volatility in tech, health, or service industries, particularly connecting to, Virgo and Leo things. So Virgo can be everything from health and order and cleaning and services, but that connection to Leo is also, stuff that's going on with casinos, stuff that's going on with, trading, things that are kind of connected to entertainment and media. And where there is major changes or scheduling changes or layoffs or shifts that are kind of going on, revolving around some of that stuff. Now, I would also watch for emotional overwhelm because the eclipse is going to be kind of lingering all week long. And we can see themes kind of connected to escapism. So you guys really want to kind of ground your energies the best that you can. Your typical, South Node and Virgo, I'll just, clean out the closet. I'll just, keep working. I'll just go a little bit longer at the gym. Those things aren't going to work. It's going to be really focusing on Pisces, which is actually, I don't feel like doing anything. Okay, don't do that. I feel like I need to rest, or I feel like, my gut's telling me something. Pay attention. Now, to best work with this transit, we need to ground our energy a little bit more because we can feel a little mentally scattered and kind of drained. So it would be good to, get outside in nature, go for a walk, do some gardening, do some cooking, simple kind of tasks and routines that can ground us. And it can be as simple as, if you're listening right now and you're cleaning out your fridge, or you're folding your kids' laundry, or you're vacuuming your car, right? That can be good, but we can only do so much of that stuff this week. So yes, do kind of keep in mind that there needs to be a mind, body, spirit balance this week. Journaling can be helpful, and even decluttering your space can be helpful, and focusing on wellness routines that are going to be more Pisces. Hot saunas, swimming, soaking, right? Going for a walk by the beach, meditating, that kind of stuff. and surrendering and kind of affirming that, yeah, it's time to let some of this stuff go. Maybe I thought I was being busy, but I'm not. And using discernment without judgment. Avoid overthinking and act on your intuitive nudges this week, because I think that's going to make way for healing. Now, their theme really is letting go, because the South Node is where we've kind of over-relied on things. And so this can be letting go of control, letting go of the details, and also, holding on will create stagnation. And you guys will see that we're going to get spanked if we aren't letting go right now during that September 21st solar eclipse, because it's going to oppose Saturn. Now, this week, the eclipses and the conjunctions are really forcing closures, and they're clearing out karma for spiritual growth. And it's really about, resistance that's kind of amplifying suffering, while flow is going to bring peace. Now, globally and personally, it's going to be different for everybody. So you have to look at where you have anything, or I would say 17 to about 19 degrees of Virgo is going to be most prominent for you. If you have a sun, moon, or rising there, or a personal planet. But globally, I expect news on health reforms, labor strikes in service sectors, environmental cleanups. Stock market may dip, especially in creative or tech areas, with leadership scandals and child welfare debates. Personally, I think we're going to feel a pull to just audit our habits and toxic routines, heal old wounds, and kind of realign with purpose. Obviously, the effects will vary by chart. So if you've got anything that's going to be square that immutable sign, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Trines from, let's say, Taurus or Capricorn can be really helpful. Sextiles, if you have anything in, Cancer or Scorpio, can be helpful. So look at your chart as a whole. But the dates that you guys are going to want to watch, and including the dates for the week ahead, you can find down below in the description. You guys will always see it also at the corner of my screen right here. You're going to see when the transits are happening and the date, because I get so many comments from people that are like, well, what day is it? And put it in the comments, or put it in the description, or it's there. It's in the description. It's on the screen. You guys can see it. I'm Central Time. So part of the reason why I'm a little cautious with giving you guys time zones is because we've got people who are in Australia. We've got people who are in South America. We've got people who are in Canada. We've got people on Eastern and Pacific time. So you're going to have to adjust that according to where you are. So when I tell you guys the time, I'm telling you round about it at Central Time. So you're going to have to do that conversion, or just check in the description below and you guys will see that information. But September 10th is the South Node Sun conjunction. September 11th is the Mercury-South Node connection. September 13th is the Sun-Mercury Cazimi. You guys will get a video on that probably on Tuesday. And then on the September 14th, not tied to any of this completely, but that'll be the last quarter moon square. So the moon will actually be going through Gemini this week, right at the end of the week, and it's going to come into a square with Mercury, the dispositor, the Sun, and the North and the South Node. Really setting us up for that whole O-shift moment of what is breaking down as we're preparing for the September 21st solar eclipse, okay? All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk all things September 7th through the 14th, 2025. I'm starting off on Sunday the 7th. Good morning. Welcome to my weekly sermon. I hope my Sunday crew is doing well. I hope you guys are thriving and enjoying what is going to be the first eclipse of the eclipses this fall, a lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now, if you guys haven't seen it, I did a video on that. Go find it. I posted it a couple weeks ago. You can see what it means for you, or you can check out my webinar. But essentially, this is a day that I would just be relaxing and unwinding and not doing much. So not everybody will have that experience. And we know that a full moon lunar eclipse, which will be happening midday, is a big emotional kind of culmination. So we had a new moon around the beginning of March of 2025 in Pisces. This is that kind of 6-month blossoming and blooming. So you got to look at where Pisces is in your chart. Obviously, a lunar eclipse is very emotional. It's a full moon on steroids. So for not everybody is going to have that super positive impact, especially if you have anything that's going to be around, 14, 15, 16, 17 degrees of immutable signs. You're getting hit by that. Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sag. However, the North Node is involved. So it's kind of like, hey, we must kind of wrap this up, or we must dissolve this, or we must kind of trust the process. And it's ruled by Jupiter, and it's trining Jupiter. So it's just very watery, very emotional, in my opinion. The other thing that we're going to see is the eclipse is going to hit in the afternoon. Oops. Sorry, guys. It's going to hit in the afternoon. So let's look at the exact time. It's going to be around 1:08 p.m. Central Time. So that's going to be around 11:08 on the Pacific Coast and around 2:08 Eastern Time. But honestly, you guys have been feeling it since Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some of you guys have been feeling it for the last couple of weeks. You don't need something to happen the day of the eclipse. I have found actually, like I was looking at the last eclipse that we had in Pisces. And when we had that eclipse, it was like a month later that I had some of the effects of the eclipse. So it can play out a little bit longer. Some of you guys, it's coming a little bit early. Now, when we have the eclipse come through, as I talked in my video, not only does it trine Jupiter, which I think is great for emotional healing and home and family changes, but it quincunxes Venus and it kind of quincunxes Mars. So it does kind of create a bit of a yod here, where Moon in Pisces is illuminating and bringing to fruition, drama in relationships, drama and conflict in partnerships and commitment. And it's kind of airing some of that stuff out. So a lot of like what's been hidden suddenly becomes unveiled and it's like illuminated during a Pisces eclipse. That's why it can be so like emotionally kind of jarring. And then we will see that eclipse, like I said, around 11-ish Central Time. And it's going to kind of continue for a little while. So you'll be feeling the effects of it all day. Sunday is a bit dreamy and emotional, and I think it is spiritually charged, but closure feels very kind of faded this week. So there can be waves of compassion. There could also be a lot of sadness. There could be a lot of closing and kind of finishing things out. But I think I would lean into the positive of the Jupiter trine where, yes, some things are difficult to leave old homes behind, old parts of our life behind, to be closing out chapters in our family, but it can also be really positive for a lot of us. And there could be a lot of emotional and ancestral kind of healing that can come through this. So my tip for Sunday, I think, to navigate the day is just surrender. Surrender to feelings without leaning into escapism tendencies. You don't need a full moon or a lunar eclipse in Pisces to, I think, have issues in the Pisces department. Saturn is back in Pisces now. It's retrograde and it's at 29 degrees, still conjunct Saturn, still conjunct Neptune. For many people, I would be asking myself, like, what am I using as a crutch this week? Am I sleeping too much? Am I drinking too much? Am I eating too much? Am I watching too much TV? Am I isolating and not calling people back? Certainly that's something that can kind of come up during some of these eclipses. And I would say that the whole theme of this cycle this month and really into the beginning of next year until Saturn leaves Pisces and goes into Aries is, where are we holding back? And there could be like too much fear and kind of paranoia that can be coming up. So I recommend surrendering to those feelings, not leaning into overdoing it or escapism tendencies, maybe journaling about what you're releasing, meditating or being in water, going swimming, soaking, going to the spa, getting a massage. Like, these are all great things you could do today. Getting a pedicure, right? Pisces' feet. And avoid making any big decisions until some of the fog clears. Now, I would say we really want to wait until the end of September because the next eclipse is going to be a bit of like a wild card as well. But still, hopefully you guys, enjoy the eclipse today and it's going well. So let me know what you guys have planned for your eclipse celebrations. And then the moon is going to come into conjunction with the North Node in the PM hours. That's going to be around 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And that's positive because it's saying like, okay, now we're all aligning with what we actually need to focus on: healing, organizing, or cleaning up. 18. This also starts to come into a trine with Jupiter. Sunday night, tonight, if you're watching this on Sunday, you guys have any crazy dreams last night, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I want you guys to pay attention to your dreams because the moon's meeting with the North Node in Pisces, which is about sleep and kind of like the other side. And then it's going to come into conjunction with Saturn. And this can be actually about a lot of ancestors. So you guys might notice like an uptick in, I had a dream about my grandma, or my dog, or maybe I had a dream about my deceased relative, and I haven't, thought of them in forever, but they showed up in my dream. The veil is very, very thin when Saturn is conjunct Neptune. And also with Saturn retrograde, and it's like a part of this eclipse cycle, and the North Node is there. Like, I feel like I'm getting more clarity, I think, in my dreams than like when I'm awake. It's like the weirdest thing. Or like my intuition will be very strong about something and I'm like, this is stupid. And then I'll listen to it. And it was like, right. So I don't know if you guys are feeling that, but you're going to notice that's going to kick in pretty into overdrive, I would say, over this next week. Now, it will also trine Jupiter, so it can be very emotional, but it can also be making us cry happy tears. Obviously, Jupiter deals with joy, so I'm wondering how Sunday manifest for a lot of people. And then overnight, we're going to see the moon continue to go through Pisces. And then that's taking us into Monday, September the 8th. And when we wake up first thing in the morning, the moon is still in Pisces. So you're still going to feel the effects of the eclipse from yesterday. You might have like an eclipse hangover. And the moon's going to be applying to a conjunction to Saturn, which is a little tricky. So you'll actually see that in the later AM hours. The eclipse vibes are still being felt. And then in the afternoon, we're going to see the moon that's going to shift into Aries. Okay, so it's going to keep doing its thing. It looks like it's going to conjunct Saturn around midday, depending on where you are. And that's that critical 29, anaretic degree. So it's like we're kind of feeling like whatever happened yesterday, okay, like we're finally kind of completing that phase. And then boom, there's going to be a pretty significant vibe shift around 2 o'clock Central Time as the moon is entering into Aries. So we go from the last sign of the zodiac, mutable water, where there was an eclipse, to the first sign of the zodiac, cardinal fire. And it's like, okay, that happened. What are you going to do about it? Monday starts slow, but it really kicks into overdrive in the afternoon. So when that moon shifts into Aries, we're no longer really looking at Jupiter. Now we're looking at Mars. And when the moon goes through Aries, it'll conjunct Neptune, sextile Pluto in Aquarius, sextile Uranus in Gemini. So it starts kind of lighting up a bunch of air and fire placements. Obviously, Mars is going through Libra, so it's still kind of in that kind of challenge state where usually it wants diplomacy and relationships and partnerships in Libra, but Mars creates squabbles, conflicts, pressure and fights. And what it's highlighting is that Mars is starting to come into an opposition with Chiron and Aries, which is now retrograde. So putting that all together, the moon's going to conjunct Saturn pretty much kind of late morning into midday. Then it's going to enter into Aries around 2-ish Central Time. And then the moon will conjunct Neptune just after that. Morning feels a little heavy still. Maybe it's just like a slow start to the morning into the day, and it's a little intuitive. And then it gets kind of fiery and feisty in the afternoon. This is also post-eclipse integration, and it's going to give us a little bit more of like an innovative spark. And I would say take note, when you'll see this kind of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as the moon goes through Aries, of just Mars in opposition to Chiron. Like what relationships are hurting us and like working against us, or like where is there tension coming up in relationships because we're wounded or we're not taking care of what we need to take care of. Not only does Mars not like being in the sign, but it's the dispositor of Chiron. Okay, thankfully Mars and Venus are slightly in a sextile, but we're going to start to see that conflict in certain relationships, and we're going to see people who are usually diplomatic that are not, or people who are going to be feeling called out, or they're going to be feeling like their partners are going to be a little bit more kind of like judgmental or passive aggressive. So I think to navigate Monday, set boundaries early, like ground yourself, do a meditation, do something like that to kind of collect your thoughts before you go to work. You're going to see a lot of stuff that's going to get more done in the afternoon. And I would say channel that energy into bold new starts and initiatives, and also listening to your intuition. Moon's going to be conjunct Neptune. We can still feel sensitive, but we can also be more tapped in. And this allows us, I think, with some of the sextiles to Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini, be more innovative and not be as impulsive. Like we have outlets for some of this stuff, okay? So as the day continues, the moon is going to keep moving through Aries. It comes into that conjunction late afternoon. And when it does, which is like around 4 p.m., it's going to sextile Pluto and Uranus. So pretty much like a lot of people are going to have a slow morning, go to lunch, hit their stride kind of mid-afternoon, and like finish strong at the end of the day. That's at least my interpretation. All right, so then the moon's going to keep moving through Aries. You're not going to see much else going on for the rest of the evening on the 8th. And then we're going to take this into the 9th, which will be Tuesday. And the moon is still in Aries. Obviously, still kind of touching on that building opposition with Mars. And we will see the Aries moon start coming into a trine with Venus in Leo, which I like. That'll be kind of hanging around later in the day, but it's all day, you'll feel it. And then we're also going to see the moon start coming into a square with Jupiter in Cancer. So that's going to create a cardinal T-square. It looks like it's going to square Jupiter first at a 19 in the evening. So this will be kind of building up around 8 o'clock Central. 18 degrees, square 19 degrees Jupiter, big emotional overreactions, very emotionally sensitive, conflict between our drive and our independence and the growth with home and family. And then you're going to start seeing it come into an opposition with Mars. So, cardinal signs, particularly if you have anything, I would say 17 to about 22 degrees. There can be a little bit of friction on Tuesday night, and you can definitely see that there's like several things trying to kind of happen at one time. And as the moon is the dispositor of Jupiter and it's squaring Jupiter and opposing Mars, there could be a lot of relational dynamics, which is like pushing you for growth and development within your home, your family, your domestic zone. So it can kind of feel like a little turbulent. Basically, the Aries moon will also be coming into an in conjunct or a quincunx with Mercury in Virgo, Sun in Virgo, and South Node in Virgo all day. So things feel a little jumbled and disjointed. But it does look like you guys will enjoy that Venus trine in the PM hours. Okay, 18 degrees. A lot of 18 degrees that are kind of setting up this month. Very interesting. All right, and then we're going to see the squares that are going to be happening in the PM hours. So basically, I would say from about 8 p.m. to about 11 p.m. Central Time, that's when you're going to see all of these squares kind of happening into the evening hours. So Tuesday feels to me energetic. It feels a little disgruntled because Aries wants to get something going and it's opposing Mars, and it feels like people are delaying or they're pushing back or they're resisting change. And then there could also be some scheduling conflicts. And Virgo is held, Aries is the body. This is also where people could be kind of irritated with some health related things that are coming up. But overall, the day feels energetic and passionate, and watch for the tension between action and harmony with the opposition to the Mars transit that's building. And really like desires clash with responsibility. That's the other kind of feeling that I got here. To navigate Tuesday, I would be expressing creativity confidently, right? Moon trine Venus. We also have, some themes here that are about compromise in conflicts and avoiding overindulging because the moon is going to come into a trine with Venus. That's pretty much Tuesday. This is going to take us into Wednesday, the 10th, And on Wednesday, the 10th, the moon is still going to be in Aries. And now it's coming into conjunction with Chiron. So you're going to see that first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock a.m. Central. When that happens, it's also picking up still the energy of the opposition to Mars. Now it's coming out of the opposition, but it's within range. So there could be some tension in relationships first thing in the morning on Wednesday. And the moon in Aries is kind of also highlighting that building opposition where, Mars is coming into an opposition with Chiron. Later in the afternoon, the moon will move into Taurus. So let's look at that. That looks like that's going to happen around 3 p.m. Central Time. And when that shift happens, it's a vibe shift because now we're no longer focusing on Mars. Now we're focusing on Venus. And Taurus is money, resources, anything revolving around sensuality, pleasure, banking, financing. And so I do think we're going to see some nice transits in the next day or so when we start seeing trines to all this Virgo energy. But right off the bat, when the moon goes into Taurus, it's squaring Pluto. And obviously Venus is the ruler here. So Mars and Venus are slightly in a sextile. So we can be having some, relationship stuff, collaboration opportunities are possible. However, I feel like the moon square Pluto always does bring up some kind of like intense emotional purge collectively about what's going on with what? Taurus things, food, money, resources, the earth, that kind of stuff. So watch for that. And the key transit, I think, for Wednesday is that this is the day the sun will come into a conjunction with the South Node, okay? So if you look at this, 18, it is starting to sextile Jupiter in Cancer, and the moon squaring coming into a square with Pluto talks about some kind of like major fluctuation with markets, banking, anything kind of connected to, finances. And the South Node sun is like, well, do we hear a major CEO steps down? Do we hear that there is like some major change with a company? Is there some really bad economic numbers that come out and everybody's like freaking out because the moon is going to square Pluto? Maybe. And then as the day goes on, that moon Pluto is going to perfect right around 5 o'clock Central. And then it's going to kind of ease up in the PM hours. And that's pretty much going to be it for Wednesday. So my thought is watch for the sun conjunct the South Node. So that's going to pretty much be, you're going to be feeling it all day, but it's going to be kind of later in the morning, depending on where you are. And then also know that the daily vibe, I think on Wednesday, is much more about healing wounds that are coming up that are surfacing with the South Node Sun conjunction. And it can be intense. We can feel that lack of energy or vitality, or we feel like, hey, this thing is falling apart. And we have to kind of, stay grounded while some of these things are kind of shifting. And there can definitely be some like power struggles that can come up emotionally, especially between like social groups, and finances or values, or conflicts revolving around your budgeting, your spending habits versus, what your goals are. And there could be just a little bit more kind of financial pressure happening on Wednesday. So to navigate Wednesday, I would say, first of all, face vulnerabilities with the Sun South Node. Try to do it gently. This is also about kind of really stabilizing and like letting some things go. Release control. I would say this is a week that you're like, I can't control this. Like the universe handles the details. Like whatever's happening, it's unfolding. Like I can't melt down over it. And know that this is a part of like the eclipse cycle that's still kind of playing out, because now everything's breaking down as the moon is now waning towards coming into what will be a solar eclipse on the 21st. So things will start to improve as we're getting into Thursday. So as we're kind of starting to see, on Thursday, the moon's going to then start coming into the trine with Mercury, the South Node, and the Sun. So that offers a little bit of support, but to be honest with you, with the Sun and Mercury still conjunct the South Node, it's a lot of the same things. I do think there can be some people that are finding out, jobs are changing, or they're cutting back on expenses, or they're having to, issue layoffs. But other people might be like, I finally got a job, I've been unemployed, or I'm going back into the office, they called me back. So, let me know how this is manifesting for you guys. But that moon in Taurus is not really making too many aspects right off the bat. So we will see later in the day, and it's much later in the day, that it'll start trining Mercury in the South Node. So this is going to be like around 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m. Central. The moon's going to start coming into a trine with Mercury. So this is where, when it comes to money, possessions, values, security, we can communicate and get things organized. But where is Mercury? On the South Node. It's saying like, actually, this broke down, this fell apart. And then the Sun's going to receive a trine from the moon as well, which will be, a mere hour or two later. The positive is that this is starting to sextile Jupiter, so it can be like positive things that are changing. We sold our house, we finally, bought a new one. We're moving, we were able to, rebuild the back patio, or I'm, looking for a new place to call home, that kind of stuff. And certainly I feel like Virgo can be about like agents and people that we're calling or bringing people in to fix things. So for some of you guys, you're like, well, who did we use last time to paint the house? Or, who did my sister use to remodel their kitchen? Let's call them. For other people, you could be like, I paid money to have a warranty, and, the warranty is not coming through for this kind of breakdown, or this thing that's kind of collapsing or having like a problem or a malfunction. Virgo can be things that are connected to cleaning. Like this week, my washing machine went out, and I just kind of laughed. I was like, I'm not surprised by that. It started having all kinds of like issues. It was like breaking down. So you guys might notice that you're just having to run around and put out fires and have things fixed this week. And you're like, why did this, dishwasher break down? Why is my computer malfunctioning? Why is it that, we have to replace the vacuum cleaner, that kind of stuff. Things that you need to get work done, organized, clean, or things connected to work are going to have some issues. And like, it's going to be costly, right? The moon. And the moon is coming into a square with Venus. So that tells me that we may have to be spending money to fix, correct, or kind of clean things up. And we might be like, this is not very positive. Now, obviously, this is also like news that's going on Thursday. And as many of us know, the news always comes out after the markets close on Friday. Who would have thought? But this is not setting up for a very positive financial setup going into Friday. So I'd be curious to see what's happening Friday morning, knowing the Sun conjunct the South Node. We might hear there's some major, change in a company, or something in politics. And then the moon trine Mercury, I think it's going to be about more cleaning out at the FDA. I think that's what's going to happen. But this is also like the financial kind of connection to the healthcare system. So if we start to see major changes going on revolving around, pharmaceutical laws, advertising laws, things connecting to like relationships between pharmaceutical companies and health practitioners, Virgo, what is the financial indication here? Like what's going to happen if a lot of these people are getting kind of compensated based off of the relationship they have with, some of these entities? Not very good, right? The moon squaring Venus is saying that might impact the overall kind of value of certain pharmaceutical stocks. There could also be major hits that can happen for media companies. We can hear that there's a major, media head stepping down, or a company that's going to be going under, or they're bankrupt, or they're merging, or for like a film studio. I wonder if it could be something like that, right? But particularly I'm focusing on like the 18, 19 degrees. So the 18 degrees is going to be more about kind of health and work. So let me know how it manifests. Keep an eye on your pets this week. Be mindful of what they're eating. That's another theme. I think we might hear about like a pet food recall, or a lot more chatter revolving around, pet health and pharmaceuticals and what's recommended for pets. Okay, so the moon's going to sextile Jupiter. That's pretty much the only other aspect other than the square to Venus, which you're going to see happening a couple hours later, overnight. And overnight, Mercury is also receiving a trine from the moon, and the sun is receiving a trine from the moon. So if you're like a night owl, certainly the evening of Thursday with that trine to Mercury and the sun, you can get some like really good writing in, some really good budgeting in. You could be really kind of strategizing and planning things, making changes also to not only how you're spending but how you're eating, what you're consuming. And I would say the Thursday the 11th is very practical with some of the earth trines. It's supportive. There is this focus on mental release because you're also seeing pretty much late on the 11th and then overnight, Mercury is conjunct the South Node. So right here. So this basically means that there is this sense of kind of like releasing and letting go of overthinking, and that mental release is really fostering, I think, better emotional kind of health and also abundance with trines to the moon in Taurus. And that's pretty much it. So on navigating Thursday, organize your finances or your routines, appreciate the beauty without excess, communicate thoughtfully. Try to focus on what's natural, what's organic, what is not synthetic, whether it's clothes, whether it's food. If you want to simplify your routine, go for what's actually going to be a little bit more natural or improving in a much more kind of like holistic herbal way, especially with like Taurus and Virgo kind of getting hit here. Maybe some news revolving around more changes to like food, like the FDA, less about medication, more about what's going on with food and food services. Might be a connection there. All right, so we're going to keep going. And this is going to take us into the 12th, which is Friday. So when you guys wake up, the moon is still in Taurus. And the moon has come out of the square with Venus, although we're feeling it slightly. And what it's starting to do is in conjunct or quincunx Mars in Libra, so there could be some differences of opinion on resources and values with relationships. And it's also starting to come into a sextile with Saturn in Pisces. So in the evening hours, the moon will actually go into Gemini. Let's look at that. So that's going to happen around 5 p.m.-ish Central Time. And when the moon goes into Gemini, it's going to trine Pluto in Aquarius. It's going to start coming into, no, that's really the only aspect, sextile with Neptune. So that's going to be taking place. And then I guess the key transit is, for me, when the moon goes out of Taurus and it goes into Gemini, now we're really focusing on, Mercury has conjuncted the South Node, right? What did we release? What broke down? Like what wasn't working? What wasn't healthy? And Mercury is combust. It's actually conjunct the sun. It's preparing to have the Cazimi. So there's going to be a lot of shifts in communication going on Friday night. And what you'll find is like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the moon's going to start coming into a square at the nodes, and then Mercury and the sun, and that'll be the first quarter square, which is going to be like, oh my God, what's going on? What new news or information are we getting? And like, how is that impacting our health or our schedules in some way? So the key transit here, I think, on the 12th is actually when the moon enters into Gemini, because it's going to highlight this Sun Mercury-South Node that's all kind of lingering and the sun combust. And you'll see the moon is going to be in conjunct Mars first thing in the morning in sextile Saturn. And then you're also going to see the moon enter into Gemini. It's going to be like around 4:30. in the afternoon, 5 o'clock. And then it will conjunct Uranus shortly after. And then it's going to trine Pluto kind of in the early kind of PM hours. And we keep moving forward here. Not much else is going to happen. The Uranus conjunction around 7, the Pluto trine around 7, and now Mercury is starting to cazimi with the Sun. So that's very significant on Friday for communication. I think for Friday, the morning feels steady, and then as the moon leaves Taurus and it goes into Gemini, it becomes more communicative, it becomes more social, it becomes more curious, and it can really make for an electric evening, especially like going on a short distance trip, a road trip, hanging out with siblings, neighbors, connecting with your community, going for a walk around town. Like there could be a lot going on here. But there's going to be some news because Mercury is connected to this and it's conjunct the Sun. And the actual cazimi looks like, we haven't looked at this yet, but it looks like it's going to be at 21 degrees. So when the moon is in Gemini, the Sun and Mercury are conjunct. So something is about to be released or realized, or there is something changing. And it's at a Scorpio degree, so there's about a major transformation. And 20 degrees is about toxins. It's about things that are deadly. So I'm like, is there going to be some news released on Friday night or over the weekend about, some stuff that they don't want impacting the market, so they don't want a lot of people paying attention to or kind of hearing about? Maybe. Recently on X, it was a couple weeks ago, I did a video where I was talking about Mars conjunct the South Node in Virgo. And if you guys haven't seen that, go and check it out because I did not put it on YouTube because I can't. I'll get spanked for it. But I talk about specific cycles in time in the past when we had, rollouts of certain things and how it was all connected to that South Node degree, 18 degrees of Virgo. And you see Mars go through there, and it brought up a bunch of stuff recently with the FDA. Now the cazimi is going to be around there. The conjunctions are around there. And I think this is like the clearing up or like the disclosure of misleading data, statistics, and information. So I think that that's going to happen. And if you guys haven't seen it, go watch that video because I posted it there. And I'll probably do a follow-up depending on what happens with this next week because I talked about every time we see aspects or conjunctions or eclipses, even the eclipse is opposing it, that this is going to bring a total shakedown of that stuff. Now, I think the key here on the 12th to kind of navigate the day is watch for innovations and deep insights, social opportunities, balance patience with adaptability, and embrace some of the surprises for growth as that moon's coming into conjunction with Uranus. Now, overnight, we're going to see Mercury pass the Sun. So it does look like the actual cazimi is going to happen first thing in the morning on the 13th, okay? And that's going to be happening at around 20 degrees and 55 minutes. So we will be looking at that from the perspective of 21. You guys will get a video on that soon. But what I can tell you is that because Mercury deals with the past, because it's conjuncting the Sun, because it's going to be at 20 degrees, we could see that there is some disclosure about some very toxic medications. We could also find out that there's a lot of information coming up about pets' health. We could also find out that there's actually really bad news coming up for job numbers, even worse than we thought, and some kind of connections to Scorpio, which could be about, debt. It could be about taxes. That's why you're hearing some places that are like, should we get rid of, this tax or that tax or, be adding this or removing that? Like there's more talk about that from leaders. And I also feel like that conjunction followed up with the moon coming into a square with the South Node, the Sun, and Mercury makes for like a what the heck kind of communication period on the 13th and the 14th, so Saturday and Sunday. So we'll do talk about that, but watch for this to be like an epiphany, some insight, some breakthrough. I think secrets and information that we weren't supposed to know or things that we didn't know, and where, media, Gemini, news anchors, other people are challenging people in positions of power, or they're challenging the narrative, or maybe, they're going to be shocked and surprised that, a leader dies, or there is some secret illness or something they had and we didn't know. And Virgo is about respiratory stuff, and it's also about digestion. It could also mean that we find out that, somebody is, spreading news and information about there being some potential health-related risks or issues or some new potential future, kind of pandemic or something. And people are like, that's crazy. But it could. You guys are going to be really surprised when you see the solar eclipse come through on the 21st later this month, because that eclipse is going to oppose Saturn, right? And also Neptune. And it's at a critical degree, which is like the people are going to go, we got to do this right now. We're going to see a sudden shift in direction where everybody's going to suddenly be super focused on health and habits and routines. And they're going to be resisting Saturn. Saturn is the establishment. So they're going to see people go, no, I'm going more in the holistic, natural direction. I want to stay away from hospitals. I don't want to be in a position of, potentially having my organs taken, from me, or being in a situation where I'm having forced medications or whatever. People are going to start resisting that. But people are also going to stop drinking as much. They're going to quit a lot of habits. They're going to focus more on, mindfulness practices and other things rather than kind of leading into certain medications that they become reliant on. And I think you're going to see a swing in the direction of a lot of people not drinking and drugging, right? Saturn and Neptune and Aries next year is going to be about doing life like raw, like literally, like not having anything that you're kind of holding on to. So this is the time where we start to see where we've been a little too attached to some stuff. So I think that, for the most part, going into Saturday with that Gemini moon, it's highlighting the cazimi. You might have some unexpected communication or ideas that are coming up or something like that. And then you have the cazimi that's going to be taking place at 20 degrees. The moon is going to continue to go through Gemini, which is about, short distance trips, learning, communication, media, ideas. And the moon is going to come into a square with the North or South Node. So that's not going to happen until very late in the day on Saturday. However, that cazimi is part of the square because overnight the moon will square Sun and Mercury. And this is technically like the last quarter square that's happening like Saturday into Sunday. So the feeling that I get is watch for the cazimi in the morning, watch for the squares that are going to be happening to the nodes very late at night. Saturday feels like there's a lot of mental buzz, but there's also tension between ideas, right, and intuition. Gemini is like chatty, it's the receiver. Pisces, North Node is going to be our intuition. And also Virgo is going to be more about, data and information. And that's why, and I remember saying this when Jupiter went through Gemini, when the nodes went through Gemini, I was like, that was the beginning of, fake news, right? Hearing the fake news and then the fact checking and everything that was happening. And now we have Uranus going through Gemini, and now we have squares to Gemini by the nodes, which is like, yes, there is two sides to every situation. The truth is somewhere in between. It's not one extreme or the other, which is what we have a tendency to see. But on one hand of the spectrum, with all this North Node, Saturn, and Pisces, there's too much sacredness. There's too much things that have been kind of shielded, and like there has been enough disclosure. And then on the other hand, there's also been like a complete breakdown of health and I think services and routines, anything that's like about, health and promoting health and like being able to help people purify and detoxify. And that's why I think a lot of people are like, wait a second, like, okay, so if things were hidden and also at the same time, we see situations where we had doctors and specialists and experts and people who are, showing us the charts and the graphs on the economy or like the banking situation, like, which is it? It's in the middle. You're going to see it's a little bit in the middle. So that moon square the North and the South Node very late on Saturday is representing two different perspectives in a narrative of what's breaking down and what is yet to come. And I think this North Node, Saturn and Pisces, like a lot of people like, trust the process. And people are like, where are we going? We feel like it's like the blind leading the blind, So this is a good day for brainstorming. I will say that. It's also a good day, I think, to be a little bit more discerning from facts and illusions. Try to keep an open mind and see a different perspective. And also rest to be able to kind of integrate some of these highlights and things that kind of pop up for you. And watch for the cazimi, because I do think that there could be something that's coming up for you guys where you're getting some key insight or information this day. And this is going to take us into Sunday. So Sunday morning, the moon is still in Gemini. Now we're feeling the tail end of the moon square the Sun and Mercury. But if you're an early riser, certainly getting around, communicating, sending emails, setting up meetings, even, catching the bus to work, whatever, feels like an impossible situation. Now it's Sunday, so not everybody's going to be working, but some people might be getting word that, oh, we're not going back to work on Monday, or, we're having outages, or there's problems, or we can't get the server up, or there's something like that. You can hear that. So it's still highlighting that square. And the Mercury, moon square is not friendly either because Mercury is connected to the moon. So it's at a 22. And that's going to happen first thing in the morning, like around 7 a.m. Central Time. So when that square happens at 22, it's about work. It's about work. It's about government. It's about announcements revolving around health. Guys, there is so much stuff that's going to happen over the weekend. It's crazy. Like, and I think that a lot of it is just delaying it. So that way people aren't really hearing the news, or it's not a part of like the mainstream news headlines during the week. But I'm waiting for it. I'm wondering, what is it going to be? All right. So you're going to have that square. And then you're going to see that the square is over, I mean, pretty early on by 8 a.m. And then the moon's going to keep going through Gemini. It is going to start to come into a sextile with Chiron and Aries, so we can kind of heal through communication and words and ideas. And it's also going to start to sextile Venus in Leo, which is great for relationships. Venus in Leo is actually starting to come into a sextile with Mars in Libra, also good for relationships, but it's at 24, so it's more kind of sensual, compassionate in nature. And then the last aspect the moon is going to make before it changes signs is it's going to come into a square with Saturn. Now, this is going to square Saturn at 28, around 6 p.m. Central. This could be a difficulty in communication. Might be feeling a little like, should I say something? Should I not? Is it the right time? Is this the right words? We're kind of doubting something about communication, or we're feeling emotionally blocked. And then the last aspect we're going to see is this will come into Cancer. Okay, so by about 8 o'clock Central Time on Sunday the 14th, the moon is at home in Cancer. Immediately squares Neptune, where we can feel a little bit more emotionally sensitive and vulnerable. At least when the moon's in Cancer, it's at home. So it's like home, domestic, being home, with the family, stuff like that on Sunday night is a theme. But watch out with that moon square Neptune. We can like absorb stuff from other people. And this represents tension where we don't have personal clarity, or we're not sure where we're going, or we're not sure how to assert ourselves. And then the moon is going to be like, well, what has happened in the past? Or like, what's holding us back? Now, when the moon goes into Cancer, not much else is happening once it comes out of that square with Neptune. So you're going to see that by about 10 p.m. And I would say for the most part, the daily vibe on Sunday is obviously we're still picking up that last quarter square. So this is the breakdown, and now the moon next week will go through Cancer, Leo, and then coming into Virgo, where it's going to have that critical solar eclipse. So from here on out, it's like everything's breaking down. It's getting cleared out. And we're going to feel like there is a need on Sunday for like more analytical adjustments, obviously. And this is also about harmonious actions as well, because it's making its way into Cancer. And it's about shifting into emotional depth amid new boundaries. Now, the Sunday vibe, I think, is, or the key here to kind of navigate Sunday is going to be about refining your plans in the morning and focusing on nurturing home domestic stuff in the evening, maybe avoiding guilt or confusion, because I could see Saturn square the moon, Neptune square the moon, kind of bringing up some of those themes on Sunday. And then you guys are going to be going into next week. So come back next week. We'll talk about what's kind of going on. And obviously stay subscribed so you can see the Kazini video coming out this week and some of the other stuff that we're going to be kind of talking about. So with that being said, I do want to show you where Mercury and the Sun are meeting with the South Node this week. And I'd like to show this to you guys from the perspective of the 12 rising signs. I also want to remind you guys, I'm a Western astrologer. I'm not a Vedic astrologer. I like to practice Western. And for the sake of my presentation today, I'm going to be showing this to you from the perspective of the whole sign system. So you want to listen to make the most of my predictions to your rising sign first. That's going to tell you where this conjunction is taking place, where in your life. Listen to your sun sign. That's going to apply to your creativity, your overall vitality, also probably even your career, and your moon sign, because, well, the moon sign is about our emotions and the nodes are connected to the moon. So definitely listen to your moon sign. As a reminder also, if you are a Gemini, a Leo, or a Virgo rising this week, this is a really prominent kind of transit for you. Special emphasis on, I would say, really 17 to like 22 degrees of Virgo, because you guys are going to get the Cazimi on the top end and you're going to have the South Node on the bottom end. So if you have anything around there, this will be impacting you. All right, so let's start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. We're going to talk about the Sun, South Node, Mercury conjunction. So I guess I should have said this, but I'll say this now. For all of the signs, this is the same area where you're going to see that there is going to be the next solar eclipse in Virgo. Okay, so we already had a new moon here a couple weeks ago. We're gonna have a second one, which will be a solar eclipse on the 21st. It's also the same place where you're going to see the sun oppose Saturn during the eclipse, Mercury oppose Saturn. And it's showing you throughout this week with the Cazimi, hey, pay attention to this. This is breaking down. You got to do this thing here to better prepare you for the next eclipse. All right, so just in general for everybody. All right. So Aries and Aries risings. You guys are doing the Sun and Mercury conjunct the South Node in your natal 6th house. All right, well, for starters, Mercury rules your 3rd house, which is things like communication, siblings, transportation, and also health, work, and your habits, while the Sun is connected to your 5th house of creativity and romance. So you'll see the Sun and Mercury conjunct the South Node in your 6th house. And really, this is about releasing overwork, right? Health habits, critical self-talk, and daily routines. I predict for my Aries risings that a past job or wellness issue can resurface for closure this week. And I would expect endings in service roles or pet matters. As for tips and how to navigate this, obviously let go of feeling like you need to be perfect. Taking on too much at work and old routines definitely crumble. I would be revisiting childhood health patterns for healing. I think that can be a theme, and how you can be making adjustments to your schedule and bringing more time in to do more of what you love, right? And obviously keep an eye on your health. I think that's very important here as well. Good luck, Aries. All right, for Taurus and Taurus risings, you guys are going to be experiencing the Sun, South Node, Mercury conjunction happening in a fellow Earth sign, Virgo, in your natal 5th house. All right, Taurus, well, Mercury is directly tied to your 2nd house, which deals with, obviously, money, finances, and values, self-esteem. 5th house, which deals with creativity and anything connecting to fun, dating, or children. So as you see the conjunction happening in your 5th house, it's also tying in the Sun, which rules your house and home sector. So putting it all together, the themes are going to be purging ego-driven creativity, romantic patterns, and overthinking, joy, dating, or children. Now, the predictions that I have for you guys is that creative projects or flings can end. Child-related news can bring karmic insights. I think that this can also be a time where there is some healing going on in the heart space, or you're releasing something that either romantically or creatively doesn't serve you. There could be some unexpected communication going on with children or younger people. And I think for a lot of you guys, this is about releasing kind of showy expressions. Past hobbies fade, old family dynamics influence current fun. Okay? Good luck, Taurus. Gemini and Gemini rising. Well, your chart ruler's on the move. It's conjuncting the South Node with the Sun in the 4th house. And the Mercury connection to your 1st house is yourself, your identity, as well as anything connecting to your home and your family, and anything also revolving around property, home organization, kids, relatives, while the Sun is connected to the 3rd house of moving, relocating, traveling, contracts, negotiations, siblings, particularly conversations you have with male relatives. So it could be, brothers, cousins, uncles, father figures. Watch for this. Reconnecting with people also, from the past family-wise is another theme. So for my Geminis, the Sun Mercury conjunct the South Node in the 4th, the themes are going to be letting go of critical family narratives or mental kind of roots. But also you might feel like, I just can't talk to a sibling today, or I don't want to go home and deal with cleaning out the garage, or I'm going crazy because I feel like everything is kind of disheveled in my home. And I do predict for a lot of you guys that this is about resolving past karma with home and family matters. And I think to navigate this, it's really about kind of shedding this tendency of feeling like your house has to be in order. It can also be bringing up old, home family patterns that are dissolving and ancestral stories that's like resurfacing to release. But also watch for somebody to, maybe make a reappearance, like somebody who you used to live with, kind of reaching back out to you, or maybe going back home and connecting with family. That can be another theme, having to travel, or maybe you're in the process of preparing to move or planning a move. Good luck, Gemini. Cancer and Cancer rising, you guys are going to be doing the Sun Mercury-South Node conjunction in the sign of Virgo in your natal 3rd house. Now, for you guys, Mercury is tied to the 12th house, which is all about the subconscious, secrets, and self-undoing. And it's also connected to your 3rd house of communication, learning, anything revolving around movement, vehicles, and documents, even siblings or neighbors. So when you see this conjunction happening with all of these planets, it's going to be really kind of highlighting for you also the sun, which is going to be about money and self-worth. So this conjunction in the 3rd house is really about releasing over-analytical themes and sibling karma. You might have a car breakdown, hope not. You can have like a gadget breakdown. There could be a misunderstanding or a miscommunication about money that can happen. And there can also be kind of clearing of old debts, short trips or learning cycles can end. And I think to navigate this time, I would really pay attention because this is about you dropping kind of like the negative self-talk. It's also like not having nitpicking in your dialogues and past ideas that you're kind of breaking away from, and hidden mental habits from childhood could potentially be emerging. Good luck, Cancer and Cancer risings. Let me know what happens. Read the details, please, in all of your guys' contracts. And be careful when you're driving. Really focus on breath work and breathing, right? That's really important in the 3rd house, too. All right. We have got the Leo and Leo rising. So this is significant for you guys. You're ruled by the sun. You're going to see South Node Sun Mercury conjunct in your 2nd house. The sun is you. So it's about your money, your resources, your values. And obviously Mercury rules the same thing. And this is about your relationship to money and resources, or you returning back to making money in some way, or something coming back and being granted or being given something. Now, Mercury also rules your 11th house. So you could be making an announcement that's like, hey guys, I'm back, or I'm back seeing clients, or I'm kind of back in action when it comes to socializing, party planning, getting together with people. Maybe you're also really reevaluating some of the relationships that you have with others this week. So as you see the South Node connection, though, for a lot of people, this is like purging, material attachments and being too critical of yourself. And I think that there can be financial releases or value shifts and ego, that's tied to either your money or your possession starts to unravel. And I would say to navigate this week, let go of feeling like you have to earn a certain amount and expect that there's going to be some changes with your security, and past scarcity mindsets can resurface, but you want to kind of be releasing them and letting them go. I have Sun and Mercury nearly in the 2nd house. When the South Node went through there a couple of years ago, I was moving and I was like, I'm going to get rid of a bunch of stuff. And it manifested as like things that I've been collecting. So I actually went through like all of my books and decided what I would part ways with, what I would donate, what I would give away. Some people bought some of my books, which was cool. Got rid of some of my tarot decks. So for you guys, it can mean that you're cleaning out your office space, but it can also mean you're cleaning up your budget or you're cleaning up your diet. And getting rid of things or donating things can actually be really beneficial. So hope that helps. All right, we got Virgo and Virgo rising. I feel like I need a drum roll for Virgo. Can I do like a check-in with you guys? Can you let me know how you're doing? Because the Virgo risings I know in my life and like the clients that I'm seeing, oh man, this is particularly difficult for Virgo, not because it's in the sign, but because of the planets that are involved. So, obviously Mercury rules you. Wherever Mercury is where you go. So with Mercury conjunct the South Node, in itself, you're not able to rely on those typical kind of analytical, organizational, everything needs to be perfect skills. It's just like you feel like you just don't have it right now, and that's okay. Equally, with the sun involved with the conjunction of the South Node, the sun rules the 12th house of self-undoing, and Mercury is about work and your status or your career or, your authority. You're kind of feeling like you don't have your typical kind of spidey senses that you would usually have. And when I look at all of this, because the 12th house sun is about self-sabotage, isolation, career and self kind of get tied into this. In the 1st house, it's like, you have to release self-criticism, and there can be definite karmic identity issues that are coming up right now and like patterns. And the truth is like Virgo, you got to let stuff go. Like you're going to be leaving one version of yourself behind. That's the best way I can explain it. And there can be patterns and tendencies and habits and ways that you're super critical on yourself that is not benefiting you, and it's also not benefiting your relationships. And I think a lot of you guys can see that because you're seeing through the eclipses that are playing out, especially into the next month, like what is and is not working. And you may not realize just how much of a perfectionist you are, how hard on yourself you are, and how that's actually like creating some friction in relationships. So I think now is the time to release that. I would be embracing the, personal rebirth through endings. There could be health or appearance transformations. I think that's a big one. And I think this is also about kind of surrendering this feeling of needing to overly kind of analyze everything and like releasing and shedding some of the ego as well. And old self-doubts from past lives or past kind of, situations are now kind of getting shaken loose. So it's a really good time, Virgos. Pay attention to your health. Be willing to ask for help. Remember the North Node's in the 7th. So whether it's a therapist, an astrologer, a spouse, a life coach, a manager, other people are supposed to come in. And guess what? Pisces is like, compared to you guys, kind of like Delulu. So yeah, you will be talking to psychics. You will go and say, hey, I will work with, a hypnotherapist, or I will do a past life regression, or I'll go and see, somebody who practices acupuncture or something different. And you need that to balance things out right now because your usual ways of problem solving is just, it does not feel strong. So take care of your health, take care of your mind. And I hope it goes well. I'd like to hear from you guys what happens or what realization you kind of come to this week. Libra and Libra rising, you guys are going to do the South Node Mercury Sun conjunction in Virgo in your natal 12th house. Well, Libra, Mercury is tied to the 9th house, which is about your beliefs and also travel, and the 12th house, which is about your dreams, subconscious, and bad habits behind the scenes. So as the Sun conjuncts Mercury, it's also tying in the theme of your 11th house. And when we put it all together, this basically means that in the 12th house, which is usually hidden from you, so it's like you won't see this unless you're alone, you're resting, you're dreaming, you're meditating, or you're taking time in nature. This is about Libra's letting go of hidden fears and mental isolation. I feel like for many of you guys, there's going to be like this subconscious purge that's going to happen, and it's also tied to the eclipses. So, Libra, you're having this eclipse in Pisces in your 6th, which can represent, hey, there's a change at work or my schedule or with my health. And then it can kind of send you into a bit of a spiral. But also, if you choose to let go and be like, no, I need to adjust or adapt because whatever is changing is helping me get into flow, it can be beneficial for you. But definitely subconscious purging, spiritual or dream insights will help resolve karma. And tips on, how to navigate this, I would be like, release any of your secret fears or worries, Libra. This is about your inner world kind of illuminating and showing you what has to be dissolved. And, doing retreats, doing meditation, doing some kind of like journaling and reflection can happen. Obviously, the 12th house is also losses. So I could see for some Virgo and, for some for some Libra and Libra rising, sorry guys, you're going to see that there is a possibility of losing a friend. It could be about losing a friendship. It could be about some loss of a spiritual teacher, some loss of a belief or a philosophy. Something like that can happen, so watch for that. And maybe with the most recent Mercury retrograde, it's been like about sorting out whether or not you're going to, let a friend go. And now you're like, I'm done with it. I don't need that. That's possible. Anyway, let me know what happens, Libra. Good luck. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. What's up, Scorpio? You're going to be doing the Sun South Node Mercury conjunction in Virgo in your natal 11th house. All right, Scorpio. So Mercury ties to your 8th house of joint finances, intimacy, and vulnerability, and also your 11th house of friends, networks, and also your goals, while the Sun rules your career. So as all three of these line up in your 11th house, what this is going to be bringing up for you is themes of kind of purging group dynamics and where people are kind of more critical of your, your work, your career. You're like out of sight, out of mind. Like, I'm not absorbing that anymore. There can also be like feeling like something's just not really working in a group dynamic at work or even in a friend or a social dynamic. This could also mean that it's possible, that some friendships end or evolve, or some people from the past come back. There can be networking karma that clears up. And I think for you guys to kind of navigate this, it's really about dropping this feeling of I have to hit certain goals in a certain order, right? Or like everything has to line up just perfect for my career or with my social status. It can also mean that social circles break and old alliances from groups may be coming back in and resurfacing. I also think you're one of the signs that can feel like there's big dramatic changes in friendships, or that there is a loss or a letting go of a friendship. That's definitely a theme. Or realizing just what old goals need to go in order to get to where you want to go with your career. All right. Good luck, Scorpio. Let me know what happens. For Sag and Sag rising, you guys are going to be experiencing the Sun, South Node, Mercury conjunction taking place in your natal 10th house. So as with all the mutable signs, Virgo, Pisces, and Sag, you guys are feeling it. Gemini too. And the Sun Mercury conjunction is tying into the themes of Mercury ruling your 7th house of relationships, clients, and partnerships, the 10th house of your career, your professional life, and your status, and the Sun's connection to your 9th house, which is going to be more about teaching, traveling, or your beliefs. So we put it all together in the 10th house, and this is going to be very interesting for my Sag risings. Something is about to change in a very big way with your status. I don't know if it's going to be your relationship status, because the moon's going to be coming into conjunction with Uranus. So if you're a Sag or a Sag rising, you're going to want to be watching when this is all taking place around the 11th, 12th, 13th, where it could either mean that because a partnership comes into your life, like a manager, a spouse, a business partner, a client, it will change the course of the trajectory of your career. On the other hand, it could also mean that, a partnership or a relationship's acting up, there's suddenly something changing, and like you're on and off or back and forth, and it's about making an announcement or coming to this realization that's like, okay, now I have to tell people, we're not business partners anymore, or we don't work together anymore, or we're divorcing, we're separating, something's going on there. And particularly at 18 and 19 degrees, it's going to be about, do you have a healthy relationship with work? Do you have a healthy relationship with partners? Now, on the other hand, I could see for some Sag and Sag risings that this is going to be bringing up for you guys, like releasing the feeling of needing to be perfect at work. Maybe there's some public image karma that can be popping up. In the 7th and the 10th house are very, very visible. So a lot of people are going to be seeing what's going on with you. It can also be about job shifts or authority ending and reputation alignments. Some of you guys might go back to work. Some of you guys are going to be quitting a job, or there's going to be a big announcement about whether or not, there's going to be mergers in a company, or whether or not there's going to be changes at work. And this is the setup for what's actually coming down the road when you start to see the eclipses. So whatever's changing now is going to be about the big eclipse moment where some of you guys might quit a job or start something new later in the month. I think that this is really about just letting go of these like critical ambitions. And, if you feel like professional paths are crumbling right now, or your usual way of working or getting things done is not working, there's something to that. And that might mean that it's sending you in the direction of the Sun, which is, well, do I have some time in between jobs? Do I go on a trip? Does this mean that you have to go back to school? Does this mean that you connect with a mentor and you're like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? Certainly, I think that can be part of the process for many of you guys. And let me know what happens. Try to navigate this the best you can. I would say the only silver lining here is that it is sextiling Jupiter. So whatever is changing or breaking down with your career or your reputation or your status, it is supporting you. You don't see it because Jupiter is invisible in your 8th house. That's your ruler. And it's very emotional. It's bringing up a lot of emotional shifts and like vulnerability revolving around that. But it can also mean that if a job ends, what are you gaining? Some of you guys are going to get severance packages. Some of you guys are going to get some kind of benefit. Some of you guys are going to go, oh, I got an inheritance, or I got money. I'm taking a break from work, or I got an advance for my book. I'm going to go write it. That kind of stuff. So it's going to be taking a step back, but there's going to be some kind of support that's going to come as a result of this. So good luck, Sag. Let me know what happens. Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you guys are going to do the conjunction of the South Node, Sun, and Mercury, and a fellow sister Earth sign, Virgo, in your natal 9th house. Well, Mercury's tied to your 6th house of health, habits, and routine. It's also connecting to your 9th house of education, travel, and your beliefs. It will be conjuncting the Sun, which represents change and transformation, as it ties to your 8th house. So Capricorn, putting it all together, I think that this conjunction is about purging dogmatic thoughts and travel karma, legal karma, in particular about money owed or money that needs to be paid out. That can be a theme. Expenses revolving around travel and education can be another theme. And I think for a lot of you guys, your belief systems are going to evolve, and there could be long journeys or studies that can finally come to a conclusion. Now, to navigate this time, I think this is about really seeing, how some of these effects play out. Maybe releasing over analytical kind of philosophies, or your worldviews kind of break or shatter in some capacity, especially when it comes to money. And it could also mean that old adventures or teachers suddenly reappear. And so, you might go back to your studies, you might reconnect with a teacher. Can also mean that you're reinvesting in traveling or education. And if there's some travel mishaps that are coming up for you, because, the eclipse was in your third, it can mean that, it is reimbursed, especially if it's for work, or that there can be a expense relating to travel or education, but that it's actually beneficial, I think, for you in the long term. A little bit easier to navigate if you're like a Capricorn or a Taurus, because for the most part, especially if you're, 17 to, let's say, like 22 degrees, these energies are going to be kind of trining you. So I think it's going to be a little bit easier for you guys to navigate. But I'm wondering, does some of you decide to cancel a trip? Do you decide to change direction with where you're going to school? Is there some kind of news about funding in these topics that kind of pop up for you guys? And is there legal stuff happening? Because I could see that for some Capricorns. Let me know. Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you guys are going to be experiencing the Sun Mercury-South Node conjunction in Virgo in your natal 8th house. Now, Mercury is tied to your 5th house of creativity, self-expression, romance, and children. It's also directly tied to your 8th house of joint finances, investments, intimacy, taxes, death, and transformation. And this is an interesting one. So my Aquariuses, putting it all together in your 8th house, that Sun rules relationships. So this could be a very powerful week to go to therapy. This could be a very powerful, transformative week when it comes to your relationship to other people and money. This can also be an indication that you are letting go of intimate critiques and financial karma. And I think that there's going to be either debt or inheritance resolutions and deep purging revolving around bonds and intimacy. Now, there could be changes in how you're taking risks or investing. There could also be opportunities for you to kind of clear out old romantic kind of karma. And there's definitely a lot of lessons between, what is mine and what is other people's. So there may be some kind of financial news, or your partner's telling you about something they invested in, or there's something changing with them. Maybe they're cutting back, or they're spending less, or they have a job change. And I think that the theme here for a lot of you guys is really about surrendering in control when it comes to sharing. Certainly Saturn back in your 2nd house, you're feeling the financial pressure right now. So I could see this as having trust issues over money and relationships, and suddenly, you're having conversations to try to dissolve that. There could be also past mergers or losses that are potentially surfacing for some of you guys. Let me know what happens, Aquarius. Good luck. And then we got Pisces and Pisces risings. You guys are going to be experiencing the South Node Sun Mercury conjunction happening in your natal 7th house in your opposite sign. So if you got anything like 17 to 22 degrees of Pisces, Sun, Moon, or rising, this is all opposing you, is relational in some way, shape, or form. Now, obviously Mercury rules your relationships, but the 7th house is therapists, astrologers, business partners, spouses, people you work with, healthcare practitioners, Virgo, your marketplace. So there could be a surge in new clients or people from the past coming back to see you again, or getting that phone call from your ex, right? Ooh, that could happen. Or feeling like certain relationships are just very much distancing themselves or disconnecting with you, or they're kind of going ghost. Now, Mercury also rules your home and your family situation. So there could be big conversations you're having about where you're living with your partner, or there could be big changes revolving around, your home that's being brought on by a partner, a roommate, a family member, something like that. So really this is about releasing relational perfectionism and partner karma, where you're like, this is too much for me. I can't handle it. Whatever your crisis is, or whatever your habit is, or whatever's going on, I can't absorb that. And it can also mean that, relationships can end or transform and contracts can resolve. But I think for a lot of you guys, this is about kind of dropping that critical dynamic with other people. And like if bonds have to break this week, they do. And old partners or, kind of like mirrors from the past can come up. Like that's the thing about the seventh house is that oftentimes this is the sign that we attract and it rubs us the wrong way. So it's kind of showing you this, the shadow self. So even though you're, Pisces, Sun, Moon, Rising, Virgo in opposition to you or in the seventh house means that that's part of your shadow that's like overly critical, worrisome, like health oriented. And you're kind of like, I don't want to be around that, or I don't want to like fall back into, being around the wrong people or absorbing other people's kind of habits or like their miscommunication tendencies. And this will bleed into the eclipse when you start to see the sun and then also Mercury opposed Saturn. You're going to be like, actually, no, it's really good to have space from this person, or like I need to kind of have a shift in my kind of boundaries and like bring in different relationships. So watch for that. Certainly the sun is also connected to kind of hashing out issues in relationships or, reconnecting with people that you've worked with or going back to old healthcare practitioners, going back to a therapist, an astrologer, you're reconnecting with like a coach or even like a trainer, right? We're trying to find ways to kind of like navigate communication over what? Children, Leo. So a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings are like, I'm having issues with my babysitter. I'm dealing with baby daddy stuff. There's issues going on, setting up schedules, trying to co-parent. These things can kind of pop off. And as you see that break down, it's the setup for the eclipse. So as you're feeling like you draw that boundary with people, they're going to really push back. You're going to see that push back big time over like the next couple of weeks. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that is the week of the 7th of September through the 14th, 2025 in a nutshell. Obviously, we're going to be between eclipses. We've got a lot of stuff on the South Node. You got a Cazimi. So as we wrap up this week, know that the Virgo South Node is kind of your cosmic invitation to release with grace. At least that's how I'm trying to look at it. Letting go of the old to welcome in more of that kind of boundless Pisces flow. And I think that evolution awaits beyond this week. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please make sure that you give me a thumbs up if you found this video helpful at all. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow me on X at BTV Astro for more astro insights. Consider obviously joining my memberships if you guys would like to do that. If you want to support my work or if you want to see more about me, click the links below. Head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. There I've got a newsletter. Sign up for it because I've got lots of goodies coming in the fall for you guys. And also just thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this is a good eclipse week for everyone. Leave me your comments below. Love to hear how some of these predictions land for you guys. And I'll catch you all back here very soon. Take care.